In the name of God, Mother Nature's tongue. Language education for promoting environmental sensitivity by Ibrahim Zarin Shoja with Mehdi Mahtabiniya. Presented by Ibrahim Zarin Shoja. Last summer, after 15 years, I was about to visit the nature of northern part of my country, Iran. But the more I explored nature, the heavier my heart became. This nature was not the same nature I rejoiced and played in when I was a child. All those pollutions were suffocating my heart. For a few minutes, my life and my job as an English teacher seemed absurd to me. I asked myself, what is the point of teaching English or other subject matters when we are ignorant about safekeeping the beautiful nature that God has entrusted us? What is the point of teaching foreign languages when we are still foreigner to the language of our hearts and language of our mother nature? A dominant mechanistic worldview has contaminated most areas of our life, especially our education. It has separated us from ourselves, others, nature, and our Creator. Wars, crimes, poverty, and ecological catastrophes are ripple effects of this compartmentalization. It is necessary for educators of any level and subject matter to be aware of and do something about this fact. I couldn't let go of those questions, so, as an English teacher, I decided to promote ecological sensitivity in my students. Primary steps. I think the first step for educating a child to befriend nature is befriending child's nature. Traditional education attacks the heart of child's nature and soul, feelings, by limiting his playtime, overloading him with stressful tests and homework, suppressing his creativity and imagination, and ignoring his unique voice. In my first steps, I try my best to desensitize my students to stressful tests and homework. They got the right to communicate their feelings and criticisms, especially through reflective essays and journals. And I integrated art and play into my syllabi as much as I could. My students were so happy for this primary change, especially for gaining respect and trust. One of them expressed his gratitude for reading their reflective essays carefully. Another student wrote, "Teacher respects students, even naughty ones." Main steps. Real education is a journey that transforms both teacher and student. When a student trusts you, he will accompany you in this journey. Our journey towards ecological sensitivity involved promoting sense of wonder, appreciation of interconnection among all things in the world, global responsibility, and a vision of hope. Sense of wonder. Wonder appeals to our nature. Education should promote wonder to connect the child to the whole nature. Once, I presented my students a PowerPoint show about the vastness of universe. As the camera zoomed out from a leaf to Earth, solar system, and oceans of galaxies, my students chorused "Wow!" and sometimes hit their palms on their foreheads. The beauty of wonder in their faces was so wonderful to me. They wrote, "We have an endless life. God has created the world beautiful and harmonic. In comparison to the world, we're both too small and too big. Creation is so great and we are so tiny. Thank God, because I'm not too big to become supercilious and not too little to not exist." Interconnections. People who stick to daily life stop exploring the causes and effects of many important issues of their world. Ecological sensitivity involves a deep perception of interconnectedness in the universe. Education should promote higher levels of causality in students and help them discover interconnections among everyone and everything. Once, our theme was butterfly effect. We wrote domino effects of an act of kindness, collaboratively. Then, we discussed similar interconnections among natural forces and elements. Each student drew his perception of those interconnections and wrote dialogues among natural elements and forces. Later on, I called this activity Divine Discourse because students chose a discourse of love among mountains, plants, animals, etc. Such practices promotes in students an appreciation of life and rightful living for every creature. These are some sample artworks by my students on divine discourse. You can see two more samples. Promoting global responsibility. The more you perceive interconnectedness among all in the world, the more careful you will be about the domino effects of your actions. A person with such a holistic worldview in Asia, for example, doesn't make a fire for fun because it is crystal clear for him that he will contribute to global warming. He knows that penguins' habitat destruction in Antarctica is only one ripple effect of this act. Reflection on interconnectedness invokes responsibility and awareness towards what happens around you. Global change requires awareness and responsibility on the part of global citizens. Once we decided to write a letter to God and report humans' behavior towards nature. One student wrote, "Dear God, we killed the fish, we burnt the trees, and we cut the trees. We polluted your sky, I don't know why. We destroyed Earth." You can see their artworks on this theme. Then, using imperative sentences, we prepared some banners for a rally for protection of nature. This could be completed with a real rally, but school policies only allow for indoor activities. Despite our limitations, that session had good impacts. One student wrote to me, "This session had a great impact on me. From now on, I'll try my best to protect the earth." Another student who was working on a banner for bird protection wrote, "I felt closer to the bird. Maybe it sounds ridiculous, but I could hear the birds in the yard who said, 'Feed us and don't make food from us. Don't imprison us because our heart is so little for the cage.'" Here you can see some more samples of their works. Promise. The very first day I entered that school, the sight of a stuffed weasel, seagull, and a woodpecker on a shelf caught my eyes. Later on, I decided to devote a session to them. I distributed among students 2 incompleted reading texts. In them, a baby weasel and a baby seagull were crying for their missing mothers. In that session, my students promised to protect them. It took a while for first students to discover that babies in their texts cried for the stuffed weasel and seagull in their own school. They were shocked. But I was shocked more because most students and even teachers who were teaching there for years hadn't noticed those animals in their school. Those poor animals had been degraded to lifeless adornments and lost among colorful wall paintings. They had failed to catch people's attention. In my last interview, one student said, "I had the happiest moments in your class, but the session on weasel and seagull made a very sad day to me." He was right. The story was too painful, but more painful than that is the pain of painlessness. A dominant mechanistic, ego-centered, consumerist and compartmentalized mentality has numbed the modern man. Under the colorful disguises of this mentality lies the promise of stagnation and death for humanity and nature. It pulls the wool before humans' aesthetic eyes that an animal or any other being is more beautiful when it is tamed, imprisoned, frozen or stuffed. This is the same mentality that conceives of an ideal student as obeying and passive, to be force-fed and stuffed with information that has little to do with his nature. It's the same mentality that destroys forests of very diverse plants and at the best state beguiles people with green parks and streets of homogenized trees. It can't even tolerate the uniqueness of those homogenized trees and molds them further. is the same mentality that tends to homogenize people in or by politics, education, research, etc. It's even eradicating the homogenized trees, and it's quenching our thirst for beauty of nature with mirages of wall paintings. This reminds me of Devil Queen of Narnia, who froze any part of nature. Promoting a vision of hope. Despite the dominance of this mentality in human affairs, we should never surrender to disappointment. Paulo Freire says, "I do not understand human existence and the struggle needed to improve it apart from hope and dream. Hope is an ontological need." In my class, we visualized a hopeful future for the earth and humanity. One of these visualization activities started like this. I closed my eyes, and students went on to complete it and make artworks about it. The results of their reflections were often surprisingly beyond my expectations. Once, for example, one group conceived of the earth as a living being with a face. In their work, each part of nature comprised a part of this face, even human being. All those parts were interconnected. Ailment in one part could affect the whole body. Another student drew Earth as a sacred mother, who held in her arms all the creatures as her children. Conclusion and reflections. I tried my best to make lemonades from lemons of my limitations. I set the purpose of teaching expected structures way beyond structures and words themselves. My students learned past tense through critical reflection on the past. They practiced connectors to discover interconnections among all things. They learned imperatives to prepare rally banners for protection of nature. They learned future tense to hope and envision a brighter future for Earth. Along with some changes in students' attitudes, some behavioral changes were reported by some parents too. For example, a mother wrote to me, "My son doesn't leave rubbish in nature anymore." In my last interview, a student confessed, "Animals have feelings too. They have their own sweet life. I wonder how we can kill them. I decided not to eat meat anymore, but my dad doesn't allow me." One night, I dreamt of a crying tree on fire. I thought it was a rare case and I should record that moment for an environmental research. As I was taking pictures, I asked myself, why don't you extinguish the fire? I dropped the camera and fetched a bucket of water. But it was too late. Tree was already lying in his ashes, breathing his last breath. I woke up with sadness. Nature warned me about the main drawback on my work, sticking too much to theory. I was warned that environmental education should be for nature, not merely about nature. This issue is more urgent than what we think. Educational systems should be aware of this urgency, and one of the major objectives of their curricula should be solving local and international environmental crises in action, and with the help of children who are encouraged to hope, dream, and act for a better world. God bless you, and thank you.